Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. My name is Steve Wald. I'm the Senior Coordinator for Government Affairs for University of Illinois Extension. And today we are very excited to present this webinar on a new report just released today, the Economic and Functional Impact of University of Illinois Extension. We look forward to questions, and we've reserved time for a question and answer session following the main webinar, following our speaker. You can do that. You can ask your question at any time using the chat tool on Zoom. And there's a button that is labeled chat towards the bottom of your screen. You can use that button to ask your question. Comments there will be visible to hosts, but not to other participants. And in fact, you may see that you have a choice of how to direct your comments. If you could send them to me, I'll be moderating the Q&A. So my name is Steve Wald, and questions sent to the chat, direct them to me, please. And now we can get things started off. To start things off, it's my pleasure to introduce the Dean of the College of Agricultural, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences, Kim Kidwell. Good morning, Kim.
Hi everybody. It's good to see all the names in the chat space, and my job today is to set the context for this very important discussion. Einstein said, everything should be as simple as possible, but not simpler. One of the perennial challenges Illinois Extension faces as the premier public engagement effort at the University of Illinois is when it comes time to explain its mission, structure, performance, and results, the scope and the scale can be overwhelming. Let's start with scale. In 2019, and you all know this much better than I do, Extension made 1.3 million educational contacts across the state. That works out to 5,200 engagements in programming every business day, including programs run on evenings and weekends. Extension offered nearly 50,000 educational program sessions on average, 960 per week. Extension also delivered face-to-face programming at 3,841 locations statewide. Online, Extension engaged with thousands more through websites, newsletters, blogs, videos, and social media. The breadth and scope of the impact that Extension has on people is just truly phenomenal. Based in a great university and engaged with individuals and families from every walk of life, at every life stage, in communities in every county, Extension also has scope. With our historic focus on food production, the environment, nutrition, health, family, youth development, and leadership, Extension covers a lot of ground. We also have experience. Extension is a proven knowledge transfer and engagement model that helped the university lead the state through the Depression, World Wars, the Green Revolution, and now through a pandemic. Today, we are investing in new partnerships with faculty throughout the college and the university to harness computational and communication technologies to address the economic, environmental, and social opportunities and challenges of today and tomorrow. With the release of this report on Extension's economic and functional impact, we have a clear and compelling statement of Extension's value to the state of Illinois. I appreciate that the report approaches its task as simply as possible, but not simpler, because Extension is a sophisticated, ambitious, and profoundly effective enterprise as appropriate for its university setting in the visionary land-grant mission, which is to effectively apply the university's research and teaching missions to the problems and opportunities of Illinois. And I very much look forward to watching this report be impacted today. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you so much, Dean Kidwell. Now I'd like to introduce the Associate Dean and Director of University of Illinois Extension, Shelley Nichols-Richardson.
Thank you, Steve, and good morning, everyone. It's really nice to be back and to see all of the listing of everyone who's participating in the webinar this morning. I just want to thank Dean Kidwell for her welcoming remarks this morning. And I want to be sure to recognize and thank Tony Franklin for leading the effort with TEConomy and being our primary point person and our contact for the impact report. So thank you, Tony. The numbers that have been shared that you heard from Dean Kidwell in today's report represents extension in 2019, which was a fairly typical year for us. But I want to speak for a minute about the value of extension right now in the midst of what we would consider a very atypical, unusual year that we have been having in 2020. In mid-March, when the stay-at-home orders were issued, our workforce transitioned very effectively to remote work and began offering exclusively online delivery very immediately. We're still assembling the metrics on that shift and that change, but our average attendance at our webinars went up tenfold in some cases, and our web traffic and social media reach surged during this year so far. Demand for extension programs and services is extremely high, and for us within extension, the reasons may be very obvious. For others who don't know extension as well, it may be curious as to why our services and the demand for those services have increased, particularly this year. Extension programs address real issues facing real people in all of our communities. The pandemic has certainly clarified certain things and certainly has called us to shift in how we deliver and how we impact society. Extension has had the answers that people needed, and we were ready to deliver on those answers. Illinois residents had questions about the safety and security of their food supply. Extension had answers. Families unaccustomed to cooking every day had questions about cooking, storage, food safety, and nutrition, and Extension had answers. Farmers had questions about supply chain disruptions, security of the workforce, and decisions about planting and marketing. Extension had answers for them. Restaurants and businesses had questions about how to safely reopen and best practices for public health and staying afloat. Extension had answers. And we have done all of this through partnerships and with experts on campus and our field staff out across the state. Local governments had questions about physical impacts, broadband capacity, and racial equity, and other topics. Extension had answers. So people from all walks of life were interested in starting a garden this year, and Extension was there to help. From coordinating with local food pantries to 4-H clubs that 3D printed face shields for frontline healthcare providers, the entire Extension network has been there working virtually for the most part, alongside residents and partners statewide, a broad component of the universities and states' pandemic response. So we know how to manage and mitigate disaster, and this is a very important part of Extension as well. As today's report lays out, Extension offers tremendous value to the university and the state in any typical year, but in atypical years, in a crisis when there's great uncertainty, this trusted network of capable educators that connects our land-grant university to every county and community in the state really proves its worth, and we will see what that worth and that value and that impact is of Illinois Extension as our representative from TEConomy talks through the report with us. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you so much, Shelley. And with that, it's my pleasure now to introduce the lead author of the Economic and Functional Impact of University of Illinois Extension, Mr. Simon Tripp. He's Principal and Senior Director of TEConomy Partners LLC. TEConomy specializes in complex impact assessments for scientific and social programs, technologies, industries, and universities. Their expertise is used by the USDA, major research universities, industry associations, and state governments. Simon Tripp co-authored the highly cited impact assessment of the Human Genome Project, and he brings over 30 years of experience to this work. His team also conducted similar projects for extension systems at major peer institutions, including Kansas State, University of Nebraska, North Carolina State, University of Missouri, University of Kentucky, Ohio State, and Oklahoma State University. And we look forward to hearing his webinar on this report. Simon Tripp, I'll turn this over to you.
So thank you for the opportunity to present today the findings from our research into the economic and functional impacts of Illinois Extension. As Stephen said, my name is Simon Tripp, and I'm a Principal and Senior Director at TEConomy Partners and the lead author for the report. The project was conducted by myself and two of my colleagues at our firm, who are also on the webinar today, Deborah Cummings and Marty Grieber. In an environment where economic prosperity is increasingly driven by knowledge and innovation, we find that extension serves an absolutely critical role. Our report provides a deep dive into the diverse impacts of Illinois extension. It uses a methodology, as Stephen said, used at many other land-grant institutions, for example, at Ohio State, University of Missouri, North Carolina State, University of Nebraska, and many others. TEConomy specializes in science and technology-based economic development, and impact analytics is a key tool that we use in our work. We were formerly known as the Battelle Technology Partnership Practice inside the Battelle Memorial Institute, and we spun out in 2015 with their blessing as an independent entity. And we have a 25-year track record in research, planning, and analytics. Certainly while we work in all areas of science and technology, we have broad experience working with colleges of agriculture, the USDA, with individual states and state governments in evaluations of land-grant university impacts and the role of experiment stations and extension in advancing positive impacts for the United States and individual states. One thing to recognize is that land-grant universities are unique among US research universities in having this formal third mission. In addition to the traditional research university missions of advancing research and provision of full-credit higher education, land-grant universities have enshrined a third mission, that of cooperative extension. Extension is a formal outreach and engagement organization that is purpose-designed to be a portal into the university for working on state challenges and needs, and also a dedicated knowledge transfer engine that puts the expertise of the university to use in advancing the state economy and improving the quality of life of Illinois communities and citizens. Extension is bidirectional, and we can see that on this diagram where we originally developed this for the United States Department of Agriculture, and it shows that the research community at the University of Illinois is guided in part by the needs and challenges that are identified from the field and carried to the university by extension. Extension is also a vehicle for transferring knowledge generated at the university, putting it to work in the hands of Illinois residents and businesses. It's actually a rather elegant system for making sure that the expertise and specialized resources of the university are highly accessible for the state. The report looks at the impacts of Illinois extension along two pathways that we show on this graphic. Illinois extension generates expenditure-based economic impacts, which are the orange circles. And that economic activity is generated by the operational expenditures of extension and the expenditures of faculty and staff. The direct and indirect economic impacts of those expenditures on Illinois output and on personal incomes are also known as backward linkage impacts by economists. While Illinois extension obviously does not exist simply to create economic stimulus through its expenditures, it's actually a pretty significant area of impact. The second pathway, that of functional impacts, is the real reason for the existence of extension. Functional impacts, which are represented by the dark blue boxes on the right on the graphic, are the primary and most important impact pathway. These impacts are generated by the core programmatic activities of extension, activities that focus on producing specific benefits for the economy and for communities, for families and individuals across Illinois. Regional economists may also refer to those as forward linkage economic impacts. We'll look at those expenditure-based impacts first. The measurement of the expenditure-based impacts associated with Illinois extension is accomplished using in-plan input-output analysis. Input-output analysis is a standard tool in regional economics. It's widely deployed across the nation for impact assessment by government and universities. Expenditure impacts comprise three core drivers: the direct expenditures of extension, the indirect effects, which are the expenditures in the supply chain that support the direct effects, and induced effects, which are the expenditures of employees across the supply chain of income derived from extension-related expenditures. Here we can see the results from the input-output analysis. Just in terms of expenditures in the state and the multiplier effects of these expenditures, Illinois Extension is clearly generating significant expenditure-based impacts. Illinois Extension directly employs 355 full-time equivalent personnel, but it also generates an additional 403 FTE jobs in the state through indirect and induced impact effects. All told, over $65 million in labor income in Illinois is supported by the system's expenditures. Total economic output in Illinois allocable to extension was $126 million for 2019 based on expenditures, which is more than 7.5 times the direct investment of state and county funds in the system, which was $16.7 million that year. As noted, the expenditure impacts are certainly a nice side benefit of Illinois Extension, but they're not the reason for the existence of Extension. Illinois Extension exists to generate functional benefits through its programming, benefits that have a positive impact on agriculture, on value-added industries, the environment, communities, and individuals across the state. Within the report, we go into significant detail in describing the wide array of programs provided by Illinois Extension and the types of functional results that are generated by these programs. With literally hundreds of programs provided and hundreds of thousands of touch points across Illinois in the course of a year by extension, it's simply not possible to measure the impact of each and every program. Rather, in the report on the functional impact side, we categorize the key areas of focus for extension and provide examples of important impacts that are being generated. We do this by looking at the focus areas under each core thematic area and then discuss the functional results and impacts generated through the work. Ultimately, the work serves to highlight the multifaceted benefits for Illinois and individual Illinoisans. On this functional impact diagram, we show that extension work falls into 5 predominantly thematic areas: the agriculture, food and natural resources, environmental stewardship, community and economic development, health, nutrition and family development, and youth development. But you can also see the circle around this, and that's cross-cutting. It's the work of extension generally in training and workforce development, and we'll discuss that first. Workforce development is very much a cross-cutting theme that we can see across much of the work of Illinois Extension. It's relevant also to each of the work in the 5 theme areas that we're going to discuss in a minute. Certainly in an increasingly knowledge and skills-driven US economy, there's no national asset more important to develop than our people. Illinois Extension, as illustrated by the bulleted activity that we show here on this slide, is engaged in many initiatives focused on developing human capital resources for Illinois in terms of career exploration and work readiness for youth, in job skills for frontline workers, formal training programs, building work skills for at-risk populations, leadership and management training at a community level and within businesses, and building a volunteer workforce that extends the work of extension even more effectively around the state. The programming provided by Illinois Extension helps people across the state become ready for work, qualified for work, and more skilled in the work that they do. This obviously provides tangible benefits, not just for the state, and for the economy and for society, but for those individuals as well. Evident, as I said earlier, in the work of Illinois Extension are these 5 central themes under which a series of individual programs and initiatives are provided at the local level and statewide. We've performed a number of different case studies, and I'll go through some of those with you. Another view of the themes is provided on this graphic. Within the report, we examine the themes by looking at the focus areas under each of the themes, and then we discuss the types of functional results and impacts generated through these areas of work. Ultimately, this work serves to highlight the multifaceted benefits for the economy, for society, and for individuals throughout Illinois. Obviously, as a major Midwestern state, agriculture has a long-standing track record of contributing to Illinois' economic success. This continues today, with this statewide industry comprising close to 10% of Illinois' total economy, and supporting 432,000 jobs. Agriculture comprises the largest category of land use in the state, occupying fully 3/4 of state land area and comprising 73,000 individual farms. Illinois Extension is a key resource supporting the agriculture, food, and natural resources value chain in the state. Because every farm is different with varying soils, topography, crop rotation history, available equipment, budgeting resources, proximity to markets, etc., there's really no one-size-fits-all approach that can be used. Extension has to tailor its recommendations and solutions, not just to the type of challenges presented, but also to the specifics of the location where the solution implementation will occur, and also to the characteristics of the implementer. Extension maintains a statewide presence of Extension field staff to provide those necessary local access resources, the knowledge and connections that are needed to deliver effective solutions and to identify specific needs. It should be noted that over 2/3 of Illinois farms are categorized as small as defined by the USDA, and those farms cannot maintain research and development operations on their own. They obviously need the innovations, the transfer of best practices and solutions to challenges, but they can't do that on their own. And for generations, Illinois Extension has been there to be an effective R&D organization for Illinois farmers and the value chain that depends on the production of farmers. The University of Illinois is one of the largest research universities in the nation, in fact, one of the largest research universities in the world, with a huge research enterprise. Almost 1/3 of that huge research enterprise is directed to research in agriculture, environmental sciences, and associated life sciences fields of direct relevance to the work of Extension. We analyzed publications and found that between 2015 and 2019, University of Illinois researchers generated over 8,500 academic publications in these areas. Extension assures that those important findings and the advancements developed through this research make their way to benefit producers and others across the food, agriculture, and natural resources value chain. Extension makes sure that those findings do not just reside in the pages of academic journals, but are really used and applied in the field to benefit Illinois. Doing justice to the very large amount of work performed across the theme is extremely difficult. Within the report, we actually have 23 narrative write-ups of specific categories of work performed under this theme of agriculture, food, and natural resource development. As you can see here, they span an extremely broad area of work, including work in major crops, in livestock, in specialty and new crops, in urban and small farm and community agriculture, and value-added industry development. Just to give some potential scale to Extension impacts in agriculture, we analyzed the effect that every 1% of total agricultural production in Illinois has on the overall economy in the state. Now, given the extensive range of programs that we talk about in the report provided by Illinois Extension to the agricultural sector, it's highly likely that Extension's programs serve to support and sustain more than 1% of agricultural output on an annual basis. However, the use of a conservative 1% estimate shows that even just 1% of such a huge industry sector supports extremely large impacts for the state. The second theme is that of environmental stewardship. Strengths in environmental sciences, ecology, and sustainability are certainly apparent in very high levels of research and publishing activity taking place in those fields at the university. Extension's deploying that expertise to enhance agricultural and community sustainability, to protect water resources and water quality, and also to promote innovations in waste management and utilization and energy utilization and programs. This slide shows just some of the programs and activities undertaken by Extension in support of environmental stewardship across the state. One of the methods that Extension quite frequently uses is a training the trainer approach, working to educate and train volunteers, teachers, and others who can carry forward Extension programming to reach large audiences. The Master Naturalist program, for example, is a great example of that. 83,000 hours of volunteer time contributed just in 2019. The third theme we examine is community and economic development. The key focus of Extension's work here is the provision of education programs for local government leaders, including for newly elected government officials. Extension also provides specialized technical assistance and facilitation services for community plans, economic development strategies, and workforce development programs. Economic development work by Extension is diverse. It's covering work to encourage the growth of existing businesses, but also doing programs to encourage entrepreneurship and new business development in urban communities, rural communities, suburbs, and small towns across Illinois. As the Dean mentioned, webinars are one of the tools being used, and webinars are increasingly being used to provide easy access to Extension expertise and education programs on an as-needed basis. Obviously, during COVID-19, this approach has been especially useful. Each year, the community and economic development programs of Extension are used by a broad range of communities across Illinois. We see over 300 requests for technical assistance to Extension. There were 55 structured community planning sessions that Extension facilitated in 2019, and more than 150 specific workforce development training programs were delivered. In the report, we use a case study of Mercer County and the Mercer County Better Together initiative as an example of how community planning is being used with leaders and residents working together, assisted by Extension, to develop specific projects that address individual challenges and needs that are specific to that county. And this type of work is being repeated across Illinois counties and communities. In terms of the fourth theme, health, nutrition, and family development, well, every day within Illinois, unfortunately, there are families and individuals dealing with very significant challenges. The bulleted statistics on the left of this slide illustrate just some of those challenges and the millions of people in Illinois who are impacted by them on an annual basis. The program in health, nutrition, and family development and Extension specifically focuses on programs that address those daily challenges and provides people with proven research-based strategies to improve their lives. SNAP-Ed programming is one of those provided by Illinois Extension. It's an especially intensive and extensive program that provides thousands of lessons to hundreds of thousands of SNAP-eligible participants in Illinois every year. The bullets on this slide illustrate the wide reach and effectiveness of Extension's food and nutrition activities. I think SNAP, Supplementary Nutrition Program, formerly known as food stamps, is probably one of the most important programs that the federal government funds across the country. And SNAP-Ed programming by Extension really works to make sure that those funds are used really efficiently and put to work to benefit people in the best possible way. In the fifth theme, youth development, I think the relevance here is that we live in an increasingly technological, knowledge-driven economy where STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math education and skills are exceptionally important for individual opportunities and also for state economic advancement. Illinois youth represent the next generation who will power your economy in the future. Making sure children and youth receive a robust education, whether in urban, small town, or rural communities across the state, is exceptionally important if Illinois is going to be able to compete successfully in an increasingly global economy. Extension has a long-standing track record of work to advance youth education and the development of their life skills. 4-H is a cornerstone of that work. Perhaps best known for agriculture-related projects and programming, 4-H actually does much, much more than that. One of the major areas of emphasis of 4-H in Illinois is certainly STEM education, with programs in robotics, in emerging technologies, Youth Science Day, a really diverse range of different programs being delivered through 4-H for youth development. Skilled leadership is also critical to Illinois' future, and Extension places an emphasis on this in its 4-H programming. Multiple programs focus on providing leadership development and civic engagement opportunities for youth. And the skills that are developed are then leveraged through 4-H volunteer programs to reach and benefit many more Illinois citizens. So in terms of conclusions, well, Illinois Extension clearly generates wide-ranging economic and functional impacts across Illinois. Annual investment for financial year 2019 from all sources, from federal government, state and local, was $60.9 million in total. Yet just the expenditure impacts alone are more than double that. Those were, as we showed earlier, 126 million for 2019. But that only tells a small part of the story. Just some of the examples of functional impacts that we track within the report and put numbers around through various types of analytics show another 477 million being generated just from the 5 examples that we show to the right on this slide, where we talk about 1% impact in agriculture, enhancing health and the benefits of that in Illinois, programs that are related to combating cancer delivered through extension, reducing risk behaviors in youth and other individuals, and also enhancing the earnings power of youth through STEM education. While financial impacts, certainly, as we can see, more than justify extension investment, it's the functional impacts of extension that really delivers for Illinois and for Illinoisans that really makes that case. Working to build resilient agriculture, sustaining the environment, improving communities, helping families, enhancing health and well-being, and realizing the potential of Illinois youth. Thank you for providing us with the opportunity to work on this important project and for the opportunity to present our findings to you today. Thank you.
Simon, thank you very much for your presentation. As we transition to the next phase of the webinar, I want to remind folks how to ask questions if you have them. I want to start out by anticipating one and answering it myself. If you haven't found it already, where can you download this report? So I'm happy to say that as of this morning, the report that is released today, you can find it from the homepage of Extension and on the College of ACES, as well as the University of Illinois. There are links to the report from all 3 of those places. But I'm going to go ahead in the chat box and share the link to the page on the Extension website that hosts this report and some associated materials. There's a written FAQ and there's a news story about the report. So you can find the report to download in full there. Simon, to get us started, you've had the opportunity to work with several other state extension systems over the years. And I was wondering if there's anything about University of Illinois Extension that struck you as noteworthy or distinctive as compared to those other states.
Oh, yes, definitely. There were several things that really stand out. I think one is because Illinois has such a diverse population, and you have a large urban agglomeration in the Chicago area, but also in other parts of the state. What we saw was a really concerted effort by Illinois Extension to reach into those urban and suburban areas to deliver customized programming. As I said earlier, people tend to think of Extension as focused on agriculture, but that's only part of what Extension does. We saw, looking at the urban setting, work taking place through specialized 4-H programs in STEM education, reaching really diverse populations within Chicago area, for example. Specific sustainability programs on urban landscaping, on safe soils and water quality. Dedicated programs now on local food and urban farming, and work on safe soils and making sure that soils in the urban setting are suited to production of food for human consumption. The food processing industry is a very large sector in Chicago, for example, and Extension's doing a lot of custom work there on Food Safety Modernization Act training and also food process development and testing for industry. There's training of at-risk persons, even work taking place in the prison community in Illinois to train people to enter work in the green industry. And then the work of economic development and workforce development generally customized to the needs of that urban population. So that certainly stood out. Another area that really stood out was the work of agricultural economics at Extension in farm management and the development of what's called the Farm Doc system, which is a real portfolio of online tools and apps that cover a really broad range of areas in financial analysis for farmers, in grain marketing, investment analysis, risk management. We'd not seen anything like that in other extension systems around the country.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon.
Mm-hmm.
We had a question, and it relates to the publication activity of the University of Illinois and its inclusion in extension programming. Can you talk a little bit about the linkage between the research arms of the university and the development of extension programs locally?
Yes, certainly. So we performed an in-depth publication analysis using Web of Science, downloading all of the publications for the university. And then we categorized those into which ones had relevance to the missions or themes, as we discussed, that Extension works in. And that's where we saw that about a third of all the publishing taking place within the University of Illinois is directly relevant to those extension programs. Clearly, the research enterprise at a land-grant university isn't the same as all research universities. So most research universities, it's very investigator-led, individual faculty-led research on topics that are of interest to them. That certainly takes place in the University of Illinois as well. But because of Extension is out in the field every day, working with producers and families, and it's identifying what the needs and challenges are of Illinois. And Extension brings those challenges to the university and to the university's researchers to work on very applied, tangible, pragmatic solutions. That's the real difference between a land-grant university and other universities.
Okay, thank you. We had a practical inquiry about making available some of the graphics and the bullets used in your presentation, and I think I can answer that by saying yes, the graphics that Simon presented in his slides today are found in the full report, which you can download, and also a recording of this webinar will be uploaded to that same website that you can find the report on. So people who weren't able to attend this morning or would like to review the presentation will be able to do so. Simon, what, in your understanding, were some of the primary reasons why this report was conducted now?
Well, Extension's been around for over 100 years. And what I've tended to find around the country is things that are long-standing and have sort of always been there are often taken for granted. And in a time when, government, the federal government, state governments, local governments have, a real budgetary crunch, it's important to not let Extension be overlooked. It's an exceptionally important and unique American treasure, as far as I'm concerned. It's always been a pleasure. We look at every industry and every sector of technology, but agriculture and the work done by Extension is just so important. It's a story that deserves to be told and that people really should understand. And the fact that it has tremendous return on investment is something that's an important story to be able to communicate to people. The dollars that are spent by the state and by local communities in support of Extension are returned many times over through a whole series of benefits to multiple populations and industries.
Okay, thank you. Another question from the deck. What do we think the impacts of a report like this are likely to be? What is or could happen as a result of being able to share some of these facts about extension?
Yeah, I don't know, Stephen, if you want me to answer those questions or if the Dean or others could perhaps talk to that. I mean, we see our reports being widely used, discussed in Washington, D.C., in Congress, looked at by the major federal government agencies, considered by the governor's office and the legislature in states. That would be a primary use. We've also, though, found these reports to be very useful internally within institutions. The University of Illinois, as we mentioned, is extremely large. And the folks in different departments and colleges across the university are heads down doing the work in their area. And perhaps, extension may not be well known and well understood even within the university itself. So I wouldn't ignore the internal audience for this work as well.
Okay, thank you for that. And I would welcome Dean Kidwell or Shelley Nichols-Richardson to unmute and offer comments here or on any of the questions.
So this is Shelley. I'm unmuted, and I absolutely agree with what Simon has said about how we're going to use the report, the impacts of the report. I think that we are frequently asked, what is the value? What is the impact of extension? Why should we support this in volunteer hours and monetarily? And so I think now what we have is we have a real answer to what is the value. We deliver 10 times what is invested in us through multiple programs across multiple audiences. And so what we intend to do with this is to share this broadly and widely. We will be working on communication pieces that will be available and will go out to, again, targeted audiences. So whether it's our internal groups like ESAC, or this information can be used with county councils, but we also want to make sure that our legislators have important pieces of this information, both state and Congress. And so we intend to do a pretty extensive marketing and publicity approach with the information that's included here, so that when we are asked the question, what is the value, what is the impact of extension, we can say definitively and have very specific answers broadly for overall extension, and then in specific areas related to some of the programmatic areas. Thanks.
Thanks, Shelley. Okay, I have another question. Simon, we had somebody ask, looking forward, in light of this report and your findings, does the report, in your eyes, offer insights as to the types of investments extension may make over the next 5 years, both in human capital and other kinds of investments that would yield even more impact? Are there particular innovations that should be considered? And are there any other lessons learned, again, from your work with other extensions that you would recommend for Illinois?
I think it's fair to say that we did not do a sort of forward-looking analysis in terms of considering what investments could be made to enhance the economic impacts of the institution. There are a lot of different areas of science and technology that are offered across the university. And what we do see as being very important into the future is transdisciplinarity at universities. So if we take an area in agriculture, for example, what's being talked about in terms of digital agriculture and precision agriculture, these are technologies using robotics and artificial intelligence and advanced computing. And those are disciplines that reside in different colleges and departments across the university. So I do think that in the future, you'll probably see a need for extension to be perhaps more engaged in integrating the capabilities of other colleges and schools across the institution that may have direct relevance to meeting those transdisciplinary, or what we would call in economic convergence themes that are occurring. It's increasingly becoming the case that the industries are so complex and the products produced are so complex, and that's certainly the case in agriculture, that no individual discipline has all the answers. It takes teamwork. And I think Extension would be a very good vehicle for bringing together a lot of those different research teams and individual researchers across the university to tackle those needs for Illinois.
Okay, thank you for those insights. To our participants, thank you for your questions. I want to sort of put out a last call for questions. We've got a couple more in the hopper, but we are very happy to make available Simon Tripp and others to help address your questions. Simon, we have a question from someone who wants to hear a little bit more about the challenges of impact assessment and assigning a dollar value for something like 4-H, which is a holistic and long-term program working with youth over several years and yielding benefits off into the future over several years. It can be useful to see the value expressed in dollar terms, but also it is a bit of a reach for some to imagine how that's done.
Right. I mean, it's one of the reasons why in the report we don't just talk about dollar impacts, because that's one aspect of what you do. But the impacts on a person's social development, on their health and well-being is equally important. And it's very hard to put a monetary value on that. There are techniques for doing that in some areas, and we have used those in the report. So one area where we are forward-looking, in effect, is on that 4-H work in education. And there we were looking at the effects of 4-H on improving school performance and then students moving on to go to 4-year college, and what effect 4-H may have had on that positive outcome. And then using generally available statistics on the value of higher education to project what the net benefit would be to people's lifetime incomes and annual incomes based on them having higher educational performance through participating in 4-H. So there are ways of doing it. It's the most important takeaway, of course, is that most of those techniques will significantly underestimate the total benefit that is being provided, because a lot of the things and the benefits being produced are not things that can be readily measured without extremely expensive longitudinal tracking studies.
Okay, so just to expand on that a little bit, the programmatic impacts documented in the report represent all of the value measurable about extension, or do they represent more of a well-defended minimum?
No.
Okay.
Yes, that's well stated. It's a conservative estimate. It's more of a floor than a ceiling in terms of the impacts that we are presenting.
Thank you. Okay, well, again, I want to thank everyone for their questions, and we are going to move to final thoughts from Simon, if he'd like to leave us with any, and also from Shelley Nichols-Richardson and Dean Kidwell.
Well, from my perspective, it's been an absolute pleasure working with the extension team and with the university and with the many external stakeholders that we talked to and interacted with across the state. It's always nice as a researcher and an impact analyst to be able to tell a really positive story. And this one really is. We're currently doing work on the impact of COVID-19 for another client, and obviously there's not all good stories in there. But extension is something that's really always quite special to talk about. And we applaud extension for the work that you do.
This is Shelley, and Simon, I just want to say thank you so much. It has been a joy to work with your team, and just want to thank you and Deborah Cummings, Marty Gruber, and also again, Tony Franklin with Extension for helping to pull materials and items together. This has been an extensive process, and so we really appreciate your attention to detail and really being a champion for Extension. It was a pleasure to work with a corporation that really understands the value and the mission of Extension. And so we really do appreciate your efforts. Also want to just thank everyone who has joined the webinar today. Thank you for your participation. I hope you have found some really interesting nuggets that you're able to take away and use within your groups, whether it's internal to Extension, whether it's working with our volunteers, working with our stakeholders, governmental agencies in the state. Just thank you for participating, and hopefully you have some nice pieces of information to share with others about the value and impact, the positive value and impact of Extension. If you're a community leader, funder, collaborator, or partner who share in our mission of putting our knowledge into practice to improve lives and livelihoods in Illinois, we want to know how we can work with you better. If you're new to Extension, please connect with your local unit or county offices, or reach out to us. You can always email us at extension@illinois.edu. If you're faculty members who are listening in, our Extension collaboration grants are available, and the call is out right now. These are due September 30th. But this provides up to $60,000 for novel and innovative linkages between our research enterprise and the Extension network. So really working with our field staff to apply that research and apply the knowledge. And then also just want to encourage people to sign up for weekly emails with Extension and the University of Illinois News. We have lots of information about upcoming webinars and opportunities to engage with Extension. So again, if you have questions about that, you can email us at extension@illinois.edu. And then if you want to just learn more about Extension in general and things that are related, that are going on within our communities and within our counties and even statewide, then I encourage you to visit extension.illinois.edu, which is our main homepage. So thank you again for your participation, and thanks, Steve, for moderating.
It is my great pleasure to close this up. You know, for me, what I want to say is how absolutely proud I am of everything that Extension does and provides to people in the state of Illinois, and so far beyond that. So I think this report gives you a moment to actually celebrate all that you do in a way that we can get to a metric piece. You know, Simon said this is a floor, not the ceiling. And I think, you know, the tangential outcomes of the work that you do are quite remarkable. And the partnerships make all the difference. So, you know, I've said since becoming dean that making the link between the discovery work, the translation of that research into communities, and the transformation that happens there is the absolute magic of a land-grant university. The unique things that we do in communities, urban settings, farm back being one of the most unique things I've ever seen as far as support for ag, those assets are a big deal, and they're underknown and under-celebrated in all the circles that we run in. So I applaud and Sam's team, the communication team, for thinking about what we're going to do with this information to actually tell a better story to enhance awareness of what Extension does and why it matters. You know, if you get a $10 investment return on every dollar spent, that's a big deal. And these are kinds of things that can help us just articulate a better story for Extension. I also want to extend the invitation that Shelley gave to people. You know, kind of the beauty of Extension is this is where the university and society actually meet in that connection space. So, you know, there are a lot of great things going on in Extension, great ideas that are coming from inside to outside. The other way works too. So if you have really good ideas that, you know, you would like to ponder or brainstorm around, think about, contact Extension. Let's see what we can do, because we want to make a difference in the communities we live in. And we really, really are just grateful for people for being supportive. And for everybody that works for Extension, thank you. You know, these things don't happen without your efforts, and you're just remarkable. So thanks for all you do, and hopefully sometime soon we'll be able to see each other in person. So take care out there, and thanks so much, Simon, for what you and your team provided here.
Okay, thank you very much, Dean Kidwell. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, all of you, for attending. That brings today's webinar to a close. You can find the report online, and we look forward to hearing from you there. Have a good day.